The Serpent and the Village Woman. The sun was setting over the small village of Bakanjo, painting the sky with orange and red hues that reflected in the calm water of the central well. It was there that Amina finished her day, as she had so many times before, filling her jar with water for her sick mother. Amina was not simply beautiful, she possessed a singular beauty that seemed to illuminate everything around her. Her face with its delicate features was framed by ebony hair that cascaded down to the middle of her back. Her deep brown eyes reflected a pure and generous soul. But beyond her physical beauty, it was her kindness and humility that touched everyone she met. The men of the village never missed an opportunity to speak to her, to offer their help, or simply to greet her as she passed. Yet, despite all this attention, Amina remained discreet, truly only responding to one of them. Every evening upon returning home, her mother Aicha reminded her of the importance she held in her life. "You are my only hope, Amina," she would say, stroking her hair. "The only reason I continue to fight against this illness. One day you will find a good man who will take care of you, and I will be able to leave in peace." These words weighed heavily on Amina's shoulders, as she felt responsible for her mother's happiness and survival. She worked hard, helping at the local market during the day and taking care of their modest home the rest of the time. One Tuesday morning, as the village was barely waking, a luxurious car drove through the central square, raising a cloud of dust in its wake. The villagers stopped, intrigued by this vehicle that contrasted so sharply with their usual surroundings. The door opened, and a man stepped out. Tall, elegant, dressed in a suit that seemed to cost more than most of the inhabitants earned in a year. "Parand," murmured an old woman sweeping in front of her door. "Is that really you, Conan's son?" The man smiled broadly, revealing white and perfectly aligned teeth. "Mother Fanta, what a joy to see you again. Yes, it's me, Parand." The news spread like wildfire through the village. Parand, the boy who had grown up in poverty, who had left Bakanjo 10 years earlier in search of a better life, was back. And he had clearly become a wealthy man. In the following days, Parand was the center of all attention. He recounted his adventures in the capital, his business successes, showed photos of his large house, and his travels abroad. His old friends, impressed, never left his side, perhaps hoping that some of his success would rub off on them. The women of the village, too, were fascinated by this new influential man. Every evening he invited different people to the small hotel where he was staying, offering drinks and food in abundance. His apparent generosity was matched only by his ego, which grew with each compliment he received. Amina, however, stayed away from this excitement. She had heard about Parand's return, but he held little interest for her. She had other concerns, such as finding a way to pay for her mother's medication, the price of which kept increasing. One Friday afternoon, when the sun was at its zenith, Amina went to the well with her jar. She wore a light dress in bright colors that her mother had sewn for her last birthday. The heat was overwhelming, and the dress, though modest, clung to the graceful curves of her body. It was at this precise moment that Parand saw her for the first time since his return. He was coming back from a walk with his friends when his gaze was drawn to this slender figure at the edge of the well. He stopped abruptly, captivated by the sight of this woman who moved with natural grace. "Who is that?" he asked one of his companions, without taking his eyes off Amina. "That's Amina, Aicha's daughter," his friend replied. "She's beautiful, isn't she? But she's not like the others. She never responds to the advances of the men in the village." A calculating smile appeared on Parand's lips. "A challenge, then. Interesting." From that day on, Parand changed his strategy. He began to go to the well regularly at the times when Amina came to fetch water. He offered her his help, engaged her in conversation about trivial matters, pretended to be interested in her life and that of her mother. At first, Amina remained distant, answering his questions politely, but briefly. However, as the days went by, Parand's persistence began to pay off. He learned that Aicha needed expensive medication, and one evening, he appeared at their door with a package containing precisely those remedies. I can't accept this, Amina said, troubled by this unexpected gesture. It's nothing, Parand insisted with a charming smile. I have the means to help you, and it gives me pleasure. Consider it a gift to an old neighbor. Aicha, seeing an opportunity to ease her daughter's burden, encouraged Amina to accept. God sometimes sends us angels in human form, she said, warmly thanking Parand. Weeks passed, and Parand became a regular visitor to Amina and Aicha's house. He always brought something, food, medicine, sometimes even clothes for Amina. He was attentive, patient, seeming genuinely interested in their well-being. Little by little, Amina's defenses lowered. She began to see in Parand a man different from the one the village spoke of, a man capable of compassion and generosity. When he took her hand for the first time during a twilight walk, she did not pull it away. Aicha observed this budding relationship with a mixture of hope and worry. Parand seemed to be the answer to her prayers, a man capable of taking care of her daughter after she was gone. Yet something in his gaze, a fleeting glint she sometimes caught when he thought no one was watching, troubled her. Be careful, my daughter, she advised Amina one evening. Appearances can be deceiving, and the hearts of men are sometimes as deep as they are mysterious. But Amina, touched by Parand's attentions and influenced by the envious comments of the other women in the village, did not want to hear these warnings. For the first time in her life, she felt special, chosen among all others. And perhaps, she thought, this was her chance to secure a better future for her mother and herself. One day, while Aicha was away visiting a healer in a neighboring village, Parand invited Amina to his place at the hotel. Hesitant but curious, she accepted, ignoring the villagers' gazes as she passed. Parand's room was luxurious compared to the dwellings in the village. Rich fabrics adorned the walls, and the air smelled of a perfume Amina did not recognize. Parand poured her a glass of an amber liquid he called whiskey. Taste it, he said with an encouraging smile. It's what important people in the capital drink. Amina took a small sip and grimaced at the bitter, burning taste. Parand laughed softly and sat down next to her, so close that she could feel the warmth of his body. You are so beautiful, Amina, he murmured, caressing her cheek. Since I saw you at the well, I can't stop thinking about you. His words and the closeness of his body sent a shiver through Amina, a mixture of pleasure and apprehension. She felt dizzy, and not just from the drink. It was then that she saw it. In a corner of the room, partially hidden behind a piece of furniture, a furtive movement caught her attention. A snake, long and slender, with a shiny black body and yellow markings, slithered silently across the floor, heading towards her. Terror seized Amina. She let out a piercing scream, jumping up and pointing at the reptile. Parand, a snake! There, look! Parand, surprised by her sudden reaction, looked in the direction she indicated, but his expression remained strangely calm, almost indifferent. Where? I don't see anything, he said, barely glancing before turning back to her. Perhaps you've had too much to drink. Come sit down again. No, Amina insisted, trembling. It was there. I saw it. A black and yellow snake. But the snake had disappeared, as if it had evaporated or had never existed. Parand pulled her close, trying to calm her, but Amina felt that something was wrong. Why hadn't he reacted? Why did he seem so unconcerned by her fear? She feigned a sudden illness and hurriedly left the hotel, ignoring Parand's calls behind her. In her rush towards home, she couldn't help but think back to her mother's warning. The next day, Parand came to see her, looking concerned. How are you today? He asked, sitting down beside her under the tree in front of her house. Better, Amina replied, still disturbed by the previous day's events. Parand, that snake yesterday. Ah, that, he said, waving his hand dismissively. It was probably just a harmless little lizard. You know how these old hotel rooms can be full of small creatures. No, Parand, it was a snake. Big, black with yellow markings. Dangerous. Parand's face hardened imperceptibly. You're imagining things, Amina. There was no snake. You were just nervous, that's all. This response left Amina deeply troubled. She was certain of what she had seen, and Paran's indifference to her fear disconcerted her. Worse, she began to wonder why he so firmly denied the snake's presence. In the following days, Amina noticed subtle changes in Paran's behavior. His visits became less frequent, and when he did come, he seemed impatient, less attentive to her words and those of her mother. Once, she surprised him talking to another woman in the village, holding her hand in the same way he held hers. One evening, as she was returning from the market, she passed the hotel where Paran was staying and heard female laughter coming from his room. Stopping against her will, she recognized Paran's voice, accompanied by that of a woman she identified as Fatih, known in the village for her casual relationships with men. "So, how's your project with the prude Amina going?" Fatih asked between bursts of laughter. "Slower than expected," Paran replied, his voice slightly slurred with alcohol. "But I'll get her, like all the others. It's just a matter of time and strategy." "And her sick mother? Are you really still paying for her medication?" "A small investment for a big return," Paran sneered. "Once Amina is won over, I'll tire of her like the others and move on to something else. That's the game." These words struck Amina like a physical blow. She staggered, moving away from the window, her basket of vegetables falling to the ground. Tears blurred her vision as she ran towards her house, her heart broken and her mind tormented. That night, and the nights that followed, Amina cried uncontrollably. In her room, on the way to the well, even in the presence of her mother who did not understand this sudden change, the snake she had seen at Paran's now took on a deeper meaning in her mind. It represented Paran's true nature, seductive but dangerous, hidden in the shadows, ready to strike at the opportune moment. Amina avoided Paran as much as possible, claiming to be busy or sick when he came. But he persisted, always bringing gifts, playing the card of concern and incomprehension at her distant behavior. One Sunday morning, overwhelmed by distress, Amina went to the village church, a place she rarely went but which seemed to offer a potential refuge. She sat alone at the back, letting her tears flow silently during the service. After the Mass, as the faithful dispersed, a man approached her. Tall and thin, with a gentle and wise face, he wore a simple white shirt and black trousers. "I see that your heart is heavy, my sister," he said in a calm and deep voice. "My name is Father Thomas. Can I help you in any way?" Something in Father Thomas's serene presence prompted Amina to confide in him. She told him everything: Paran, his promises, the snake, and what she had discovered about his true intentions. Father Thomas listened attentively, without judging or interrupting. When she had finished, he remained silent for a moment, as if deep in thought. "The snake you saw," he said finally, "was not a hallucination. It was a warning, a sign sent to protect you." Amina looked at him, surprised by his words. "You believe me then? You think that snake was real?" "As real as the danger this man represents to your soul," Father Thomas replied. "Some people are like snakes, beautiful to look at but deadly in their intention, and sometimes God sends us signs to warn us." These words resonated deeply within Amina, confirming what she felt intuitively. "What should I do now?" she asked, desperately seeking advice. "First, you must confront your fear," Father Thomas said. "Not Paran himself, but the fear that paralyzes you and makes you vulnerable. Then you must be honest with your mother. She has the right to know what is really happening." Father Thomas offered to accompany her home to speak to Aicha. Amina accepted, relieved not to have to face this ordeal alone. When they arrived at the house, they found Aicha sitting outside, looking worried. "Amina, where were you? Paran came looking for you. He seemed different, angry almost." Father Thomas calmly introduced himself to Aicha. Then Amina gathered her courage and told her mother everything she had discovered about Paran. Aicha listened, her face changing from surprise to anger, then to resignation. I knew something wasn't right about that man, she said finally. My instinct told me so, but I ignored my own intuition, blinded by the hope that he could offer you a better life. As they discussed what to do next, a noise at the door made them jump. Perrin stood there, his face contorted with anger, a far cry from the charming man he pretended to be. So that's how it is? He spat, looking from Amina to her mother and Father Thomas. You're rejecting me for a man of the church? After everything I've done for you? You did nothing out of kindness, Amina replied, finding a new strength in Father Thomas's presence. It was all just a game to you, a way to get what you wanted. Perrin took a threatening step forward. You think you're better than the others? You're nothing, Amina. Nothing. Father Thomas calmly placed himself between Perrin and the two women. I think it's time for you to leave, sir. These women no longer want your presence here. Perrin hesitated, assessing the situation. Then, with a contemptuous sneer, he said, Keep your medicine and your miserable life. You don't know what you're missing. He turned on his heel and slammed the door as he left. The silence that followed his departure was soon broken by a familiar hiss. There, in a corner of the room, the same black and yellow snake Amina had seen at Perrin's stood, menacing. The snake, Aicha cried, jumping up from her chair. Father Thomas remained surprisingly calm in the face of the reptile. He slowly approached it, murmuring words Amina could not distinguish. To the surprise of the two women, the snake seemed to hesitate, then coiled back on itself as if intimidated by the presence of the churchman. This creature is not ordinary, Father Thomas said softly. It is linked to that man in a way I do not fully understand. He took a broom from a corner of the room and, with surprising precision, pinned the snake to the ground. Without hesitation, he struck the reptile's head firmly with the handle, ending its threat. Amina and her mother watched, stunned, as the snake's body convulsed one last time before becoming still. At the same instant, a cry rang out from outside, followed by the sound of a vehicle speeding away. They rushed outside to see Perrin's car disappearing at full speed down the dusty village road. Witnesses later recounted that the man had suddenly clutched his head, screaming in pain, before getting into his vehicle and driving off as if pursued by demons. Perrin never returned to Bakonjo. Rumors circulated that he had had a terrible accident on the road to the capital, his car miraculously avoiding a huge snake that had crossed the road. As for Amina and Aicha, their lives changed unexpectedly after these events. Father Thomas helped them get in touch with a charity that provided Aicha's necessary medication free of charge. Amina found a job at the village school, teaching young children, and every Sunday she went to church no longer to cry but to thank that mysterious force that had sent a snake as a warning and a man of faith as a protector. For sometimes, Amina realized, our greatest dangers wear the mask of our greatest desires, and our true saviors arrive in the simplest and most unexpected form. As for the snake, its body was never found in Amina's house. It had disappeared, as if it had never existed, or as if it had accomplished its mission of warning and was no longer needed in the world of the living.